Hi, my name is Tomasz and you're watching Casual DIY channel. In today's episode we'll be making a simple but really useful jig. You'll be able to use this jig for tapering cuts, achieving straight edges on your boards, but also if you don't have a jointer but you do have a planer, we'll be using that to get your boards absolutely flat as well. So stay tuned and watch the video. So first of all, obviously we need a base for our jig. In this case I'm actually using 18mm MDF and basically I'm cutting it to the size that will be able to get through my planer, which in my case is 32.5 centimeters wide. And the board will be 120 centimeters long, just to give me that a bit of more flexibility. And as you can see, to achieve that I'm just using my table saw. Right then, so we've got our pieces cut to the right size, and for the fence I'm actually going to be using the offcut that I've got from this board. So to give you an indication, it's 9.5 centimeters wide and obviously 120 long, and again 18mm as the main board. So I already marked up both of the boards, so have a look. On each end of the board I've marked up where the slot for the T-slot bolts will actually go. So as you can see, we're going to cut it right here, and it's going to stop about 3 centimeters from both ends, and over here we've got 6 centimeters. Similar situation with the fence, and as you can see I'm using my router to actually cut out the slots. First of all, I'm using the wider bit on my router to allow the head of the T-bolt to actually hide inside of the board, and in a second I'm just going to be using a thinner bit to allow for the bolt to actually go through the board. If you're going to be using MDF as I am, please make sure when you're routing to use your respirator or your dust mask, because this stuff is absolutely nasty. Okay guys, so we've got to hold the pieces together, as you can see, but I was using these clamps, and that's the clamps I want to use. That's the whole idea of actually making the grooves for the T-track thing. And when I actually tested it, what happened was the middle of the fence was actually lifting up, which is not ideal. So I think there's a bit of a flaw in this design, and I don't want the fence to flex in any way, shape or form. So obviously a couple of things, probably MDF, it's probably way too long to be able to do that in this case. So what I'm going to do off camera very quickly, I'm going to use 18mm plywood, hardwood, so that should be a lot stronger than MDF. But also, instead of doing the groove itself, I'm basically going to use a T-track like so that will add a greater stability to the fence itself, because obviously it's aluminium, that will not bend at all. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do off camera. I'm going to cut that quickly to size, and what I'm going to do, I'm still going to route out the slots for the fence over here to slide over, because it needs to have a bit of flexibility, but that will only go probably about 10 centimeters each way, not the whole way through, and that will add some stability to the fence itself, and it will give a greater clamping pressure, because that's what we need. We don't want to lose material when pushing through our table, so that's the last thing you want. Okay, so we've got everything cut out. As you can see, we've got the groove for the T-track. Now, word of advice, this is 18mm, and basically with the track I've got, I will not be able to screw this in to the board. So basically it's not thick enough. I don't have screws that would be small enough to actually be able to screw this in, and to be fair, if the screw is so little, so tiny, they wouldn't hold it correctly anyway. So what I would recommend, use 22mm plywood if you've got it. Obviously I didn't, hence I've got this. Now how I'm going to attach it then? Well, quite simply, I'm just going to use 2-part 5mm epoxy, and I've already tested the fit is very tight, so hopefully there won't be any issues in the future. And to be fair, I've got good experience with the 5mm epoxy I've got. Nothing I made using it broke yet, so that's a good indication that should hold quite well. So I'm just going to do that now. Because this is a normal MDF, it's not MR MDF, I do need to protect it a little bit from the moisture, because obviously this jig needs to stay and remain absolutely flat. So I'm just using some spray lacquer to apply 2 thin coats just to protect the board. Right then guys, so this is now nicely finished. Obviously I put about 2 coats of the lacquer on the fence and on the main baseboard, and now it's time to add a couple of more things. So basically I want to add a stop for the fence, so the piece of wood can actually rest on it when pushed through the blade. I'm going to be using these hex drive head nuts, so I can add this fence with a bolt rather than with screw. Why is that? It will extend the longevity of this jig, because you can only get the screw in and out for so many times, and then basically the thread will not be there and it will not hold it, whereas using a bolt with that should work just fine. And the same solution will be for the baseboard, where it's going to be used through with a planer. Now with this one, the stop fence will be just on one side of the board. So basically sometimes if you're going to have longer pieces than the baseboard itself, that's not in the way. But if the board is actually as wide as the base plate, again you can just take the bolts out and remove it. Right, and so more or less all the components are now together. One thing before we finish. So basically I want to use this jig with my planer as well. So we've got the stop at one of the ends of the board, but to hold the wood on the board, making sure it's not going to move around left or right, I'm actually going to glue in are pieces of 80 grit sandpaper. Now obviously with this jig I'm not inventing the wheel, and similar ones are there on the internet. So everyone is different, and if your needs may be different to mine, obviously check out other videos as well, and maybe you can come up with the parts of the jig that you actually gonna need for your workshop. But now I'm just gonna spray adhesive them on, and then it's time to test this bad boy out. Okay then, so let's put this jig together. And there you go guys, fairly simple construction there. So let's get a straight edge on this board to start with. And now let's set up a taper cut. And as you've seen, the jig works absolutely fine, and this design with the T-slot is absolutely fantastic. There is no play in the fence itself whatsoever like with the first design. So definitely guys, spend a little bit more for the T-track, but it's so much worth it. Maybe could have just worked with the plywood instead of the MDF, and probably if you left not cut through the whole channel but left some, I don't know, in the middle for example, both of the parts together, maybe it would give a greater stability. But for the size of the jig, I think in this case this was the better option to go, and it clearly works a lot better. Now one thing I didn't show you is how to use it basically with your planer, i.e. if you don't have a jointer and you need to make one of the faces flat. So if you've got a crooked board, it's coped, whatever, it's obviously difficult to get it flat. With just jig it's a lot easier. But I couldn't find a board to actually demonstrate that to you. So there will be a quick follow-up video on my Instagram, hopefully by next week, so you can see this jig in action when I'm actually straightening a board, making sure the faces are straight and the edges are straight without actually using a jointer. But obviously you do have to have a table saw and you do have to have a planer to make that happen. But yeah guys, definitely worth making, really cool addition to my workshop. So definitely guys, follow me on Instagram, it's @casualDIY. If you didn't know yet, follow me there, because that short video will be coming out hopefully, as I said, next week. Now obviously I didn't make this jig just for the sake of making it. There will be a project that I'm actually be using it. So if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing and see this jig more in action in my future videos. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop me that like button down below. And yeah, I hope to see you on my next woodworking adventure. Till then, take care.